And we are back, everybody. Welcome, one and all, to the latest edition of the Forced Perspective Movie Podcast. I am your host, Sports Guy 515, aka Mark. I mean, people call me Mark nowadays instead of my stage name, so might as well just say I'm Mark now.
Your gimmick's been blown, brother.
It's been blown for like 5 years now, bro. but so we're back here on Forced Perspective.
You're like Dwayne.
What's that?
Like Dwayne Johnson now.
Just like Dwayne, exactly. He's not The Rock no more. He's just Dwayne. But we're back here on Forced Perspective, catching up on some of the recent releases. On this episode, we will be covering Tomb Raider, Love, Simon, Thoroughbreds, Pacific Rim Uprising, and Ready Player One. Of course, I am joined along with my normal Forced Perspective co-host, probably the one who found the golden egg before anybody else. That would be my boy Adolfo here. What's going on, man?
Well, I mean, in my youth, I was kind of a huge nerd. I wouldn't have enough time to find an Easter egg in an Atari game. So yeah.
Did we just blow it?
I don't think so.
Well, anyway, listeners, what's going on? Welcome back to another episode of Forced Perspective. Sorry we took a bit of a 2-week hiatus. You know, we've been going through some things right now, professionally, personally, but we are back. Better than ever, and we're here to catch up and talk some movies. So it's been a few weeks, Adolfo. How you been?
I've been okay. Not like I said before we started the show. Been watching. Haven't had time to watch a ton of movies, but I still kind of made a point to see the big major releases that we're going to be talking about here today. Some of the smaller releases we'll hopefully talk about in the next show. But yeah, I've been okay. How about you?
Pretty good.
I mean, it's WrestleMania weekend as we record this.
Yes, it is.
What, a couple hours before the show.
Yeah. At this time, it is about 4 hours before the WrestleMania pre-show starts, and
that pre-show into the live show into the main event will probably last about 4 days.
Dude, the Hall of Fame was like
they
don't have a mania, man.
Yeah,
for real.
Now I've made and I've mentioned it on this podcast and just in general. Like I basically took a year off from wrestling because I wasn't really super happy with the product, and I just kind of it's just I kind of lost my passion for it. But in the last month or so, I watched the Royal Rumble live because I always watch the Rumble because it's my favorite event, more so even than Mania. And in the last month or so, I was like, all right, I hear a decent buzz for WrestleMania. I'm gonna maybe I should kind of watch it. Maybe I'll start to go on the network and kind of catch up on some of the pay-per-views to see to kind of like help me prepare. And I watched I think like a couple of like the WWE summer ones, which is where kind of I think I left off around what was the April one? Payback or Backlash?
Payback, I think, was the first one.
Okay. The first one after Mania. All right. So I watched that. Like, that was the last one I had watched when I was current with the product. So I skipped a couple here and there. I watched, like, Great Balls of Fire and Battleground, and I was like, okay, this sucks. I don't know. Like, these shows are bad. So, I was like, maybe I'll just pick and choose to, like, see what's good. So I watched the Mae Young Classic, which I thought was pretty good.
That was good.
And then I watched all the NXT pay-per-views, and pretty much I just skipped all the WWE ones. So that's basically how I caught up. I watched the Mae Young Classic. I watched all the NXT pay-per-views from SummerSlam for the Brooklyn, wherever they were for Survivor Series. I don't remember where they were for
Houston.
And then the
that was War Games
one. The War Games one, and then the Philadelphia one. Those were all excellent. And then I kind of just started, and then and I was like, all right, I feel like I'm caught up, even if I don't know about the current product. I feel like I can get on what's happening here. I watched the Hall of Fame yesterday morning. So I didn't watch it live. And I started watching NXT very late last night, so I'm about halfway through that, and so far it's fucking amazing.
Amazing.
Right? I mean, I don't know how you top that. So from what I can see on Twitter and social media, and I don't care if I get spoiled, so I know what happens in all of the matches. From what I can see in social media, like the show just kept getting better. I don't know how the fuck you follow that ladder match, but then the women's match was fucking awesome. So yeah, I'm pretty excited to finish watching the show. I'm probably not going to watch Mania live because I'm gonna be recording this show and then gonna be doing some other stuff with my daughter later, so I'll probably watch it like either late tonight or throughout the day tomorrow after work. But it's the passion is slowly kind of creeping back in.
That's good.
You know what I mean? Like it's like it's kind of like, oh yeah, this is why I liked it. This is, like it's kind of coming back to me, like, oh, that's why I enjoyed it.
And then when you see Roman holding up that belt later, it's gonna all die again.
Well, here's the thing about Roman, right? Like, he's not the reason I left, because like I don't have a problem with Roman Reigns, and like I know a lot of fans hate him. Like I get that. I don't hate him. Like I don't have any issue with. I think he's actually a good worker. I don't think he's a bad promo whenever he's not giving stupid lines like suffering succotash. Like when he's just given like a normal things, like normal material to work with, I think he's fine. I just think he's boring. Like he just doesn't do anything for me. And for him to be in a top position is boring to me. So again, it's nothing with the guy. I don't think he's bad. Like, because he puts on good matches. There are matches I've seen where he's very good, and like it takes two to tango, right? So it's not like he's being carried through everything. He's a good worker. His personality just doesn't engage me. So to me, you've got a main event with. I know this is a movie podcast, but to me, you got a main event with a guy who I just don't care about, and a guy who's never there. And I know they turned that he's never there into a storyline, whatever. Like it's still like I get they turned a shoot into a work, but it's still like yeah, but he's still never there. Like I don't really care about him. So it's like the most uninteresting main event to me. Like the rest of the card looks good, but the main event itself, I'm like, whatever.
Yes, and for those of you who don't know, because I think mentioned it once or twice on this show, I do actually co-host a wrestling podcast with our boy Denon called Planet Jobbers, and we did a post NXT show last night, and it's almost become a cliche when I say that every NXT takeover tops the last one. Like, and I mean, more power to them. They're constantly putting on amazing pay-per-views. They're constantly putting on amazing matches over there. Always topping the main roster. And I felt like, I was saying to him again, this is probably the best takeover they've ever done last night. And it just felt like a cliche because I said the same thing about Philly. I said the same thing about War Games. I said the same thing about Brooklyn 3 back in August. It's like every, few months when they do these takeovers, they top themselves. And it's something that I kind of want as a wrestling fan anyways. Like you want, the product you watch, you want it to consistently do better. WWE kind of has been struggling with that lately because they keep hitting all these speed bumps, for whatever reason, whether they don't believe in this guy or they're pushing the wrong guy or they're doing this, doing that wrong. It's like they're always constantly hitting speed bumps that are avoidable. But that's probably why, that we're not seeing that from the overly produced WWE product that we get with NXT, which I know our boy Paul is behind. So, but for those of you who are wrestling fans who haven't seen NXT TakeOver yet, definitely check it out. Probably the best takeover they've ever done, like I just said. That main event with Gargano and Ciampa was the stuff of beauty, the stuff of legend. I just rewatched it again this morning before we did this show, and it's still held up. I can't wait to watch it again, probably tomorrow after work. It's just one of those matches, just like I did back in January with the Almas and Gargano match. I watched that match like freaking 10 times in the span of a week. It was just such an amazing match. Same thing with these two, but the whole card was great. So definitely check that out. And also, you were talking about Roman Reigns. Throughout the history of Planet Jobbers, which, by the way, we're about to hit our 1-year anniversary this week. So big ups to myself. Not to pat myself on the back, but big ups to myself and Denon for our 1-year anniversary on the show.
This is a cross-promotion here.
Exactly. So so throughout the whole year, I've been calling Roman I gave him the nickname Roman Stupid Reigns because he's a stupid idiot. But I gotta admit, I gotta give the devil his due. The last few months, I have been coming around on Roman Reigns promo-wise, especially the promos he did against Brock Lesnar, because I'm sure there was probably some real-life heat behind them. That's probably why they were so good. But his promos have been getting better, his matches have been getting better, and I can't really say that much bad about him anymore. Yeah, I don't like his character. Yeah, like you, I think he's boring. Yeah, I think he's been over-pushed to the moon. But as far as ability goes, like his matches are like I said, are getting better. His ability on the stick is getting better. So I can't really badmouth him for that because he is improving. He is trying. It's not like Brock Lesnar who constantly goes out there and does a 5-minute match and doesn't care about psychology or putting on a good show. He's just collecting a paycheck. Roman's not like that, obviously. And it's making me come around to him in a way. Like I still don't like him, but I don't abhor him like a lot of other people do. So he's gonna win, and it is what it is at this point.
I mean, and the thing with Roman too is like not Roman, with Brock. And not to pat myself on the back here, but like I started seeing through Brock like over a year ago, like where it was like before I kind of lost my passion, where I was just like, this motherfucker's never around. Why am I supposed to care about him? Like it went from being like, oh, he's a special attraction to, okay, he's just gonna come in and like just kill people and then go collect his paycheck and go home, have a 5-minute match. Why should I care? Like he's not exciting anymore. Like he used to put on like huge like bloody brawls with like Undertaker and Cena and Triple H, and now
And
it's
CM
just
Punk
like,
was a good match
and
too.
CM Punk, right? And then now it's like, oh, he comes in, he does a 5-minute squash and he leaves. It's like, fuck you. Like I don't want to watch that. Like that match. Like so, one of the things, and this is after my kind of hiatus. Like I watched that Samoa Joe match and it went like 8 minutes. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Like he goes down to one F5. Come on. Same with like Braun Strowman. I saw that match. Like one F5 is gonna take him down. Come on, fuck you.
That
You
was
know,
all
like,
by design, my friend.
It's
because now
bullshit.
Roman's gonna kick out of like 5 F5s tonight.
I
so.
know, but that's bullshit. Like, come on. Like it just comes off as like yeah, I get. Look, if I'm Brock in that situation and someone's paying me millions of dollars to come in and work for 5 minutes, I'd do that too. But it's like, as a fan, I don't want to watch that. Like it just comes off as fucking lazy, and he's honestly one of the reasons I stopped watching, because like I didn't care about watching him anymore.
Yeah, and Dan and I were saying back in September when that Braun match happened that Braun was they sacrificed Braun just to keep up that illusion of the F5 being this unstoppable move until Roman breaks it at WrestleMania, and kudos to Braun Strowman for building himself back up. Who knew he had all this charisma? Have you been seeing some of the stuff he's been doing? It's been pretty great.
I've seen some YouTube clips. Like, so yeah, he's pretty entertaining.
Yeah, man, and I'm glad that he was able to kind of dig himself out of the rut that Brock Lesnar put him in. And now, I mean, I'm glad he's on the card. He's doing something. I was hoping he wouldn't be left out. And I mean, I even hear like there's a rumor that Samoa Joe might be his tag partner tonight. Like, we don't know, but that would be pretty awesome.
The product, but doesn't it make sense for Elias to be his partner?
I wanted to be Elias, but they announced Elias for the Battle Royal, so I don't know if that's still going to happen.
Do double duty all the time. Adam Cole
did it. I know, but I'm just saying, like, they announced it for the Battle Royal, maybe as a red herring, but I'm hoping it's Elias. I really do. I love that guy. He's like, him and Almas are like my two like kind of fan favorite guys, just because of their wackiness.
Well, Almas, I mean, that's a guy like before I stopped watching, like I was like, I gave up on that guy. And then as I watched like the NXT product, like over the in the span of a couple of days, I watched all the shows and I just saw him evolve. I'm like, oh my god, this guy's amazing.
Yeah, and then just the match he had with Gargano in Philadelphia, which I was there live for, which was freaking awesome to be a part of. The match he had with Black last night was freaking awesome. It was like, this guy, I hope he gets called up. I hope he gets called up this week, man, because he deserves it.
Well, I mean, he lost a belt, so I mean, it's like it's not a. I mean, it could that it's usually a sign that they're gonna go.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's what Alberto should have been like 8 years ago.
Yeah. Oh, did you hear about Del Rio?
Yeah,
too,
I heard about him. He's a fucking hot mess.
Bro, Big D texts me and he goes, "Your boy Alberto showed a TNA event because he got drunk and then they fired him." And I'm like, first of all, Alberto's not my boy, never been my boy. That was his boy, bro. Remember? I was like, Almas is my boy. But yeah, WrestleMania is tonight. The date that's on every wrestling fan's calendar, no matter if you watch WWE regularly, if you watch ROH regularly, New Japan, you're going to watch WrestleMania. That's just how it is with us wrestling fans. So hopefully it's a good show tonight, but we got some movies to talk about. So
let's talk about them. Sorry, we took up like a long time talking about that, but we haven't discussed, like, you and I haven't discussed wrestling in a long time, so it was kind of one of those things.
Yeah, yeah, of course. But our first movie on the docket came out about 3 weeks ago at this point. That would be Tomb Raider. So this was so I'll let you start the intro for this review. What'd you think of Tomb Raider, Adolfo?
Well, you know what? It's good. This is a good transition from the wrestling conversation, because this is like Roman Reigns. Like I don't hate it. It was just boring. So there are a couple things that were okay about it. I liked Alicia Vikander. I think she's a great actress. Obviously, she's an Oscar award winning actress. She One for, I believe it was the Danish girl. I wanted to say Ex Machina, but it was for a Danish girl, right?
Danish Girl.
Yeah, she should have won for Ex Machina because she was amazing in that.
But that's a whole other story altogether.
Yeah, but I mean, at least she got an Oscar. She's a fantastic actress. She kind of was able to show another side of herself here as like an action star, and she proved herself to be a pretty capable action star. I mean, like she as far as doing action sequences, she was entertaining. She was funny at parts. She was sexy in the moment she's supposed to be sexy. So the movie revolves around it's like Lara Croft Begins, basically, right? It's the origin story of Lara Croft. Her father disappears when she's a child, and she has a chip on her shoulder about that. But she's classically educated. She's really smart and rich, but she doesn't want to give up on searching for her father, and won't sign like the inheritance papers until she knows that he's absolutely dead. She finds basically a hidden MacGuffin that leads her to a mysterious island, where when she gets there, she basically finds out that this is where her father, was going, like, before he disappeared. So she's kind of going there to kind of find some answers. She meets Walton Goggins, the villain of the movie, who we find out, he says that, he's the one who, slight spoilers here, he's, I was the one who killed your father, blah, blah. So, there's your personal vendetta for the movie. And then it's all about finding some hidden, again, another hidden MacGuffin, kind of like in the vein of like a Raiders or a Last Crusade, where this thing could be unleashed upon the world and it could cause total destruction. And then obviously they get into this secret tomb of this old Japanese lady, and that's exactly what happens. They all this danger, blah blah blah, and she actually raids a tomb, and then there's a big action sequence, and the heroes win in the end. I mean, that's basically the plot of Tomb Raider. It's fine. Like it's
yeah, I agree.
It's not bad. Like it's certainly a movie that, like, if you were like, this is what you call a hangover movie, right? This is like a movie that, like, you're waking up from a hangover from a previous night. You're just flipping through the channels and you just need to have something on the background. This is what Tomb Raider is, but it's not a good movie. It's, again, Alicia Vikander she's a competent action star. I would like to see her do something with better material as far as an action movie goes. And I had my doubts that she could pull off the physicality of it, because she's a small kind of framed woman. But you see her in the film, she's got some muscularity to her, and you're like, okay, I can buy it. Walton Goggins, I feel, was a little underused here. Like, I think he's I love Walton Goggins. I think he's awesome. He's especially awesome in, like, the Tarantino movies, Hateful Eight and Django. But I just feel like he was the villain of the movie, and, like, I kind of wanted him to do a little more. So his whole motivation is that he works for, like, some secret corporation, and he can't leave this island until, like, he gets into this tomb, and he just wants to go home and see his daughters, which is a decent enough angle for a villain, but they never really explore that. He kind of mentions them once, and then that's it. Like, I need a little more insanity out of him, right? Like, he was so underplayed, and, like, I kind of needed him to choose some scenery. You know what I mean? I needed him to get kind of crazy, and he doesn't really do it. He doesn't really go for it, and it's like, all right, I really wanted more of a Hateful Eight, Django Unchained kind of performance out of him, but we didn't really get that. Dominic West is in the movie as her father. He's fine. Like, again, he's another guy that is pretty good in other movies. He's especially good on the HBO show The Wire, which is one of the greatest cop drama shows ever. If you haven't ever watched The Wire, you gotta watch The Wire. And he's okay in this movie. Doesn't really blow me out of the water. And this is kind of the thing. Everything about this movie is just okay. Like, you can tell they really wanted to be female Indiana Jones, and they just didn't pull it off. Like, the only sequence I think is kind of entertaining is when they actually get into the tomb and they have to go through all the traps. That's kind of fun. But then getting out, then after that, when they finally get to, like, the MacGuffin, it's just like, after that, it's like you get, like, an entertaining, like, 10 minutes of getting to that point, and then after that, it's like, okay, now it turns into, like, a zombie movie all of a sudden. I'm like, what the fuck is this? So yeah, it's just kind of all over the place. It's just kind of there. It didn't really do a lot for me.
As far as I'm concerned, first of all, for those of you who are interested, the plot of this movie, like for those of you especially who are fans of the Tomb Raider video games, doesn't take the plot from the original first Tomb Raider game from like '96 or whenever it came out. This is actually the plot or part of the plot of the rebooted Tomb Raider that came out, I believe, in 2013 or 2014, so a few years ago. So this is based on the rebooted Tomb Raider storyline, video games, characters, and all that.
And that's the thing. I'm an old school Tomb Raider. I've only ever played the original '95 PlayStation game. That's the one I owned on the PlayStation. That's the only Tomb Raider I've ever played. So this was a little off brand for me.
I remember me. Let's see, Crash Bandicoot, Tomb Raider, Mortal Kombat Trilogy, and NFL Game Day '96, bro. Those are my first four games.
I had Mortal Kombat Trilogy. I had that one. I had Tomb Raider. What I had, what was that game called? Well, I had Tony Hawk, but I don't think that was a part of the original lineup, but I got that later. It's one of the first games I had. But what was that game with it was like a racing game, but where you were in cars, but you battled each other?
Twisted Metal.
Twisted Metal, thank you. And I had that. Those were like my first like couple PlayStation games. So there's some nostalgia there, but like this didn't stoke the nostalgia fire for me.
Right. I think, and I hate to say this, I don't know if you agree with me, but Angelina Jolie's Tomb Raider probably did a better job at that.
You know, I've never seen that one. So
you've never seen it?
No, but I will say she looks the part better. Like,
right.
I remember the trailers, but I've never seen the original movie. No.
Right. But as far as I'm concerned with this Tomb Raider, I'm going to admit this right now. About halfway through, I fell asleep for about maybe 15 minutes.
Dude, I don't blame you.
No, I mean, but you know what? It starts out interestingly enough. Like she starts off, you kind of get to know Lara Croft, the character. She's kind of a daredevil. She's kind of ballsy. She's pretty much a tomboy. And she gets into she finds her father's quote unquote crypt that has like, that message from him saying, I want you to don't go to Yamatai because, I've been trying to find this.
I'm surprised you even remember the fucking name of that place.
the island, bro. Yeah, because it's a wacky name, Yamatai. So she heads over there. That's when she runs into our boy Walton Goggins. He kidnaps her. They escape. She has that really good sequence where she's like, at the waterfall and trying to get on that plane that crash landed.
Yeah, that's a good sequence.
It's pretty good.
It's a pretty good sequence.
And then from there, I have no recollection of this movie all the way up until she confronts Walton Goggins like near the end of the movie. Wow. Like legit, I have a blank space in between them right now.
So you missed like the reveal of what happened with her dad?
Yes.
That's hilarious.
I only know because of Wikipedia now, but I have the page open, so I was actually reading some of it just now. Like I have after that waterfall sequence, I have no memory of the movie up until near the end. So I missed like when they walk into like the booby traps in the crypt and all that. So I missed all that.
See, that was actually entertaining. Like that, the plane sequence was entertaining, and like the going in and going through all the booby traps was entertaining. Like everything else was boring as shit.
Yeah, man, and I don't know, maybe it was because I went to like a 9:00 showing, but like I've done late showings before, and I've stayed awake, so it's not the problem on my end. I hope, it's definitely, it's just after that part, it's just I was just bored, man. Or I don't know, maybe I was sitting on one of those recliners. I had the leg rests at the Newport Theater I was at. Maybe it was just so comfy that I just fell asleep. I don't know, but yeah, I mean, from the part that I had seen in, the first half, it was okay. Nothing special. Basic action movie formula. I don't know what happened in the middle of it, but then when I got to the ending was all right. And that's pretty much all I have to say. Like it's an okay movie. Nothing I would run out to go see. Like, again, it's one of those movies like if you're bored on a Saturday or if you're just waking up from a hangover, like you so eloquently put, and it's on Netflix, by all means, there's worse ways to spend a Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon. But it's not something that I would tell people, oh, you got to see this, because it's really not one of, and it's disappointing, You know
what it is also with this movie? I don't give a shit about her origin. Like it's not something I ever wanted to care about or know. Like now, I don't know if the Angelina Jolie movies ever get into her origin story or not. But to me, it's like look at this is Tomb Raider wants to be Indiana Jones, right? And that's fine. I will totally take another Indiana Jones type series of movies. Doesn't matter if the lead is a male or a female. I like the concept of like an explorer going into like ancient ruins and coming into like mystical artifacts and shit. That's cool. I like that concept. It can be Tomb Raider, it can be Lara Croft, or it can be Indiana Jones. It doesn't matter to me. That's a cool concept. It's fun. But Indiana Jones, every single one, from Raiders through Crystal Skull, you don't really know how he became Indiana Jones. And you don't really care. You're just, I mean, they did do like the TV show, the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles and stuff. Like, yeah. And I never watched that show. I've heard it's good, but you don't need to watch that show to watch the Indiana Jones movies, right? Like, you go into Raiders of the Lost Ark, and you get in the opening sequence of him, going in and having Alfred Molina fuck him over, and have him run from the boulder in that whole, and then having to give over the thing to Belloc. In that whole sequence, you know exactly what Indiana Jones is about, right? And it takes 10 minutes, right? It's not an origin story, but you're introduced to the character. You see what he can do. You see what his interests are. You see what his motivation is. And then that's it. Like, you just go. Then, like, now you're on the adventure, right? Do we need a Lara Croft origin story? Do we need to know where she came from? We don't. Like, it's not something that interests me. So, like, I think I would have liked this movie better if they ditched the whole father angle about, oh, my daddy, and I want to see what happened. Like, I don't give a shit what happened to your daddy. I really don't. Like, just go on an adventure and find this fucking tomb. That's cool. Like, that's a cool concept. Just do that. And I think that's my problem with it.
Yeah, and speaking of that, the Angelina Jolie Tomb Raider film, that at least the first one did that much better, because it wasn't much of an origin story. It was essentially just Lara Croft going on an adventure, which is what we love about Tomb Raider, the video games. So here, like you so pretty brilliantly put, it was Lara Croft Begins. But do we really want to see that? I think that's probably what took a lot of the steam out of this as well.
Yeah, you don't need, like, not everyone needs an origin story. I think that's the issue. Like, I mean, certain superheroes certainly don't. We don't need to see Batman or Spider-Man or Superman's origin story again, right? Because we've seen it 100 times. But not every single hero, whether it's a superhero or an action hero or a sci-fi hero or whatever, we don't need to see their origin story. We really don't. The most origin story we ever got out of Indiana Jones was that, like, 15-minute sequence in Last Crusade where you see him stealing from those dudes, and it's like, this belongs in a museum, right? But it's really less of an origin story and more of like just character building stuff, right?
Right.
Not everyone needs an origin story. That's all I'm saying. Right.
And I mean, again, do we recommend it? Not really. It's one of those very skippable action films that you can find a dime a dozen, on Netflix or wherever. The formula's been done better many times. So I would only really recommend this to people who like Tomb Raider, who are following like the more recent games. Like, they'll get a kick out of the references and some of the Easter eggs that are in the film. But other than that, like, there's really no reason to watch this unless you're bored one day and just have nothing else to watch. So that's our thoughts on Tomb Raider. Moving on to our next film. Came out the same weekend. I actually went to see this the day after I saw Tomb Raider. Love, Simon. So Love, Simon, directed by this guy Greg Berlanti, who also did Life as We Know It. Not one of my favorite films. So let's just the little said about that, the better.
I think he's also the kind of brains behind all those CW DC superhero shows like Arrow and The Flash, and
that's right. That's him.
I think that's him too.
Yes, it is. So, like I said, directed by Greg Berlanti and starring Nick Robinson, Josh Duhamel, and Jennifer Gardner, among other actors who I will name subsequently as I go through the movie a little bit. So, basic plot, you have Simon Spear, who's played by Nick Robinson. He's your typical teenager on the outside, going through high school. I believe, I don't know if is it their senior year or is it their junior year? I can't remember what year they're in, but
I thought it was the senior year.
It was senior year? Okay.
I thought so.
Okay. I think you're probably right. I'm having a little trouble remembering. So I'm going to go with that. It's their senior year. And Simon pretty much has this giant secret. He's gay. And he's having a little bit of trouble coming to terms with it because he doesn't know who will understand him. He doesn't know if anybody he can trust with this with this big news about him. So it's essentially, this coming of age story with him trying to come to terms with who he is and kind of being able to express that freely to his friends, to his parents, to his loved ones. And the first thing I thought of when watching this, as I'm going through this movie, is John Hughes, because they take a lot of cues from the John Hughes teenage movies like Breakfast Club, 16 Candles, all those classic movies. And I'm really glad that this is a story that not to say that, we could never tell the story, but I'm glad we live in a society and a time now where a story like this is more, I guess it can be seen by more people, reach more eyeballs, especially people who kind of need to see this and come to terms with who they are, that it's okay, and number two, to being able to live in a world where this is fine, we've said this on the show. We don't like to talk about this much, but I'm fairly liberal. You're fairly liberal. And to see a movie like this play up on the big screen, it was almost as culturally breaking, if I may say so, as Black Panther was when it comes to, things that we haven't really seen in movies before, or segments of the population or minorities that haven't been really showcased on film before. This is one of those movies where, I think this is going to be one of those trailblazers that I'm sure, correct me if I'm wrong, Adolfo, and anybody else listening, but I'm sure there may have been other movies that dealt with this topic. But this is one of those movies that just seems so accessible to people because it's a teenage, coming of age film, and it just comes off like more mainstream, more acceptable by the general population. And it has that ability to affect more people in a way. I thought the writing was brilliantly done. It really touched on a lot of the aspects that I'm sure people go through who are gay and are having trouble either coming to terms with it or either having trouble finding people to confide in, because it's high school, so people who you think are your friends are not really your friends, and it's this whole thing. We've all been through it in high school at some point. So he has to deal with that internally as well, as far as having to come to his parents. He doesn't want to tell his parents. He doesn't know how he's going to take it. And that's what every single person in that position goes to. Like, is my family going to accept me? And I've seen, more often than not they are, but we've seen and read horror stories about, people getting kicked out of their houses because of this shit. And it's terrible, and it really helps you back Simon. It really helps you root on his side the entire time. Like, they portray him very sympathetically, but Nick Robinson also has a lot of charisma, so he's able to portray that character really well, so that you're not rooting for him because he's gay. You're rooting for him because he's a great guy. He's sympathetic. He has character, and you want him to have his happy ending. And the supporting cast here. Let me just read off a couple of the names here, because I know one of them is fairly well known. Kathryn Langford as Leah, who's also in that Netflix series 13 Reasons Why. She plays Hannah, the girl who killed herself. Alexandra Shipp as Abby was really good. Jorge Lindenberg Jr. as Nick was really good as well. Like, the entire his circle of friends, all the actors that were really good, and you were able to really get behind them no matter what the issue was. And again, just to kind of wrap up, it was a really great, well-told story that I'm really glad is able to be released and being able to see by such a wide population. It's getting great reviews. The critics are loving it. I believe it has a 90 on Rotten Tomatoes right now. And definitely check this out. It's in the spirit of John Hughes. You'll get a lot of the coming of age aspects of the story come directly from Hughes, inspired by Hughes. And if you're into those types of movies, you're definitely going to kick out of this one. So I think it's out of theaters now. Maybe a handful are still showing it, but when it comes out on Netflix, Blu-ray, this is a definite checkout.
Yeah, you mentioned John Hughes. This movie is certainly a John Hughes love letter. Not that he ever tackled gay relationships, at least not that I know of. I don't think he did. At least not this prominently. But the whole high school aspect of it, it's kind of, it gets shades of Ferris Bueller in there, where basically the character talking to the audience. Get shade, not as goofy as Ferris Bueller though. You get shades of like Pretty in Pink or 16 Candles in there. So like this is or even Breakfast Club. It's very much a John Hughes love letter. And you're right. It is. Now some people might point out like, oh, we just had a gay coming of age story. It was an Oscar nominated Call Me by Your Name. And yeah, we did, but that wasn't a major release by a major studio. This is a major release by a major studio. And it might while there may have been other, and I'm sure I absolutely can guarantee that there have been other gay coming of age stories featuring teenagers. I can't think of one that was this, prominently featured with a, from a major studio release. And, so it is kind of an important milestone for that. I mean, just like you mentioned Black Panther, just like there were other black superheroes before, they weren't black superheroes to the level of Black Panther with that kind of hyper promotion with a major money studio behind it. And speaking of Black Panther, do you see it beat Titanic?
It did.
It beat Titanic. It's fucking nuts.
Oh wow, man!
Well, as of Friday, it was like maybe $100,000 off from Titanic. So by the end of the weekend, it's going to beat it. So
oh yeah.
Anyway, sorry. Back to Love, Simon. So yeah, it's a very important milestone kind of film. Nick Robinson is very charismatic in the lead. He's very relatable. Like even though excuse me. Even though we have never had to deal with like having the pressures of being a closet teenager, they present it in a way that like even if you don't know that struggle of being in the closet and trying to come out, even if you don't know that struggle, you do know the struggle of being a teenager and just maybe having a secret or holding something in or not trying or trying not to be too noticeable in high school or not noticeable enough, so it's or having a secret love or trying to figure out what it does bring all that stuff from your adolescence back to you, even if you are a heterosexual male or a heterosexual female. So it's relatable on that level as well. And it absolutely is a movie that I think that you bring, again, to make the John Hughes comparison, if you look at John Hughes movies and you look at like their like box office receipts from the time, they weren't like huge money makers. They did okay. They made a profit, but they weren't like $100-200 million movies, right? They maybe like $30-40 million movies, but they became a staple of and a lot of it had to do with like replays on television, things like that, but they became a staple of 80s kids and 90s kids who grew up on them, and it kind of shaped their kind of worldview during their teenage years. And I could totally see this doing the same thing for millennials or whatever the generation after millennials is. So I think it was very well done. Like I very much enjoyed it. I think the acting was on point. The Nick Robinson was very good. And what was the actress's name that you mentioned was on 13 Reasons Why?
Kathryn Langford.
Yeah, she's very good. The parents played by Jennifer Garner and what's his name?
Josh
Duhamel. Who this is the best I've ever seen Josh Duhamel, by the way, because like
really?
No, I'm not joking, because he's always been kind of this bland pretty boy actor to me. Like he's just this kind of blank slate like romantic comedy lead, right? You know what I mean? Like just you can just kind of put him where he's generically handsome, like he's not particularly like charismatic, he's just kind of charming, he and I always kind of had like this kind of whatever, it's Josh Duhamel, like he's just the guy, he's generic handsome guy number 42, right? But this is the best I've ever seen him. Like he actually showed some good range here, especially when he was when the character first comes out to his parents, and you can tell that he's struggling with it, but he still loves his son. It was a very good performance. Like I wish I would have seen this out of him in other movies, because before, like he's never, I think, had anything worthwhile before. I mean, I hate to say it that way, but like everything he's done, I don't think. I mean, think about it. He's just done romantic comedies and Transformers movies. Like he hasn't really done anything good. So, like, I don't think he's ever had any decent material. So, and Jennifer Garner is always solid, so she was very good at here too. Yeah, so very good acting. And by the way, that's another kind of earmark, like John Hughes cliche, like having very like memorable parent figures in a movie. Like kind of like I'm thinking of Harry Dean Stanton in Pretty in Pink, or you know the Ferris. I don't remember the actors' names. Ferris Bueller's parents in Ferris Bueller, like just parents that like have like a personality and like have a memorable presence in a scene as opposed to just being generic teenager parents, right? But yeah, I enjoyed this film a lot. I would highly recommend it. It's not my favorite film of the year. I think you said it was at one point yours, but it's a very entertaining film.
Now, I am curious. I do want to ask you about the ending. I'm not going to spoil it, even though it kind of seems like it's going toward a fairly obvious ending. But when that part happened, did you get ovation? Because my screening like clapped at that. So.
Yeah, actually, they did. Whenever, yeah, that did get a good reaction. And I was in the crowd of mostly young people, and I hate to say that because I feel like I don't think I'm that old, but when I was looking around the people I was surrounded with, I was like, oh yeah, I'm the old guy here. But yeah, it was mostly younger people, and they did really appreciate the finale.
I mean, yeah, because I was gonna say because I got a huge ovation. Now, I want to say standing ovation, but it got a huge ovation when that part happened. So, but yeah, that was like the ending. That was like the perfect ending for that movie. So, but like we said, great characters. Nick Robinson, awesome in this movie. Great story, and I think it is going to be one of those like watershed moments in film when a mainstream studio is releasing this type of movie. And we're hoping, I'm sure it won't be the last. I'm not gonna say I'm hoping it won't be the last, but it's
not even the last, but it should be like I hope this is like a step to like just normalizing it, where
exactly
it's like next time something like this happens, like it's not like a big deal, it's
just normal.
It's like, well, this is like of course there's a teenage coming of age gay romance. Why wouldn't there be? You know what I mean? Like it's like so because we have so many of the other kinds. So yeah, like I think this is a good positive step.
Definitely. And I can't say anything more about it. Just definitely check it out when you get a chance, whether it's on Netflix, whether it's on Blu-ray. Definitely give this a watch because it's a really, really well-made film, and kudos to everybody involved. So that's going to do it for Love, Simon. Moving on to our next film. You have not seen Thoroughbreds. Has it been released by you at all? Like even like a little art house?
Yeah, it wasn't an art house near me. It was not close enough for me to logically get to it.
Okay, no biggie. I saw this its opening weekend at my art house, and I'm still thinking about it. I actually did a whole review. I did a whole written review on Thoroughbreds. I'm going to pull up just some references while I'm talking. But so. Thoroughbreds, directed by Corey Finley, who, let me just go through his Wikipedia real quick to see where else I've seen that name before. I think he's just been mostly a writer in the past. Let me see. Yeah, he's mostly, I think this is his first directorial gig. I can't really see anything else here that says otherwise, so I'm going to go with that. And if someone wants to correct me, go be my guest. But, okay, so directed by Corey Finley, starring Olivia Cooke, who we're going to talk about a little bit later on with Ready Player One. Anya Taylor-Joy, and Anton Yelchin in his final film appearance. So this was kind of a bittersweet moment for me watching this, and seeing that guy pop up. So essentially, the theme of this movie is appearances can be deceiving, because it's one of those movies, and the thing I thought about first, and you'll probably get a kick out of this, is you've seen Blue Velvet, right?
Of course.
That was the first vibe I got from it watching it, because it shows the suburbs and it's showing the white picket fence. It's showing, this big affluent, let's just call it this big affluent neighborhood. But there's a lot of shady shit going on behind those fences and behind those walls. So essentially, Amanda, who's played by Olivia Cooke, and Lily, played by Anya Taylor-Joy, are old childhood friends that kind of start to reconnect after Amanda is sent to Lily for tutoring. This is now they're in high school. There was a scandal that happened off screen before the movie starts involving Amanda's horse that kind of ostracizes her from the neighborhood. So Amanda's mother has to kind of coerce Lily into hanging out with Amanda more often, you know, and the mom's hoping that Lily, seeing an old friend again, would help cure what's ailing her daughter lately as far as her depression. And during this first tutoring session, Amanda, who is inexpressive, wooden, completely soulless, devoid of any sort of peppy high school personality you would expect probably from a teenager at that age, she immediately detects that Lily's putting on a facade, hiding all these feelings about her, you know, particularly in regards to Lily's stepfather, Mark, played by Paul Sparks, who, for those of you who don't know, Paul Sparks played Mickey Doyle in Boardwalk Empire. So that's where I know that guy from. That guy's awesome.
Okay. He's also in Greatest Showman too, I think, wasn't he?
Yes, that's right. I think he played the critic, right?
Yeah, he was the critic.
Yeah. But as
he popped up in sorry to interrupt. He popped up in a lot of shit where you're like, oh, I know that guy.
But the first thing every time I see him, I think of Boardwalk Empire.
Yeah,
that guy was a fucking rat in that show, but he was awesome. But as the pair grow closer, their conversations kind of start growing a little darker and increasingly uncomfortable until eventually you kind of start seeing the real sides of these two girls kind of come out in full force. And by the trailer, it's revealed that Lily does want to kill her stepfather, and it's all about whether, you know, Amanda is wondering whether she's serious or not, or is she just gonna flake like everything else in her life, which is part of kind of her backstory and her character development. So I have to say, first thing, Olivia Cooke, Anya Taylor-Joy are absolutely fantastic in this film. Cooke's portrayal of Amanda had me constantly questioning whether she was just your typical jaded, you know, kind of ostracized teenager, or if she was truly a sociopath, because the film kind of plays with you in that sense that is she just your typical teenager that doesn't care about anything, or is there something deeply wrong with this girl? It doesn't really flat out answer the question, but it's kind of left to you to kind of form your own opinion. But the way the story progresses, it's kind of leaning towards a certain opinion, which I won't reveal, but it's left ambiguous enough where you're free to kind of interpret things for yourself. But Olivia Cooke's intentionally dry line deliveries really helped this come across spectacularly and added a lot of humor to some very dark situations, if putting it lightly. Contrast this with Anya Taylor-Joy's Lily, who on paper is your typical privileged, rich, snobby teenager and the complete opposite of Amanda. But in fact, she has a little bit more in common with her than she initially thinks. And that's what makes kind of the way the story goes all that much more engaging, all that much more surprising for people too. And I was constantly in a state of awe at how well these two actresses worked together, how well they knew their characters, and the chemistry they had together on screen. It's, you know, like I said, their chemistry is just greatly reflected in a lot of their dialogue. And throughout the film, I was wondering which character was the most damaged. Because on one hand, Amanda's sociopathic tendencies make her the leading candidate. You know, she's uncomfortably straightforward in her speaking, but yet she's faked all these emotional responses her entire life simply as a way to fit in with the crowd. There's a scene in the trailer where, you know, they're watching some old black and white movie. I don't know which one it is, but, you know, the actress in that movie, you know, starts crying, and Amanda's like, oh, it's all fake, you know, and Lily's like, no, that's genuine tears. And then as she's saying that, like, Amanda's actually making herself cry and doing these fake tears, and just looks at her with this straight, like, sociopathic face, like, yeah, I just made myself cry. It's not hard to do, you know. So that was a pretty striking scene, if I may say. On the other hand, Lily comes off as more manipulative. She's always lying, trying her best to hide her true feelings and her intentions from people, while always talking behind their back. So in other words, she's a phony. And I've dealt with a lot of phonies in my life, so, you know, I can spot them a mile away at this point. So it's natural that Lily's at first horrified at Amanda's bluntness, but as the film goes on, as the story progresses, you kind of start to see the transformation in Lily's character. Well, I mean, some might call it transformation, but the film implies that this side of Lily was in there all along, and she just needed someone like Amanda to kind of awaken it. So there's some great character study here. Like, how far are we willing to go to A, fit in with society, and B, before our true selves really come out? And the poster for this film actually says Heather's meets American Psycho. And that's not too far off. I mean, it might be overinflating it just a little bit, but we talked about Heathers a couple shows ago, I think, and a lot of the spirit of Heathers in this is in this film. American Psycho, I haven't really seen in a couple years, so I'm gonna have to revisit it. But I can kind of see where they're coming from with that. But when you talk about spiritual successors to something like Heathers or American Psycho, you can definitely put Thoroughbreds in that list because it manages to tread that line with just as much stylus and finesse as those films. And coming from a director like Corey Finley, who I believe this is his first directorial effort, that's pretty impressive. The score by Eric Freelander is really good. I got to point that out because I always love, great movie scores really help enhance the experience of watching a movie. And this one was particularly well done. So, big ups to Eric Freelander. Really very Hitchcockian. So if you ever see this, kind of notice in the particular pieces of the score, like there's a lot of Hitchcock in that, and his influence. So definitely kudos to Freelander. And like I mentioned, this was Anthony Yelchin's final film performance. He didn't have too much screen time, but in the time he was there, he reminded people of just how talented he really is and how great an actor, he is and how greatly he's going to be missed by all. I mean, that was such a tragedy what happened to him, and we're gonna miss that guy. But to wrap up, Thoroughbreds is like I said, it's a very unique character study into the lives of these disenchanted, disillusioned, nobody cares about me teenagers. Coming off more like a psychological thriller than a coming of age film, like we just talked about with Love Simon. It's almost the polar opposite of something like that. It delivers very biting subtext on wealth and privilege, which makes the film kind of timely, in the society we live in with this release. The story at the end kind of seems to cop out. You know what it reminded me of, and you'll get a kick out of this too, Adolfo. You remember how much the ending of the Belko experiment ruined that movie?
Yes.
I kind of felt the same way about this one. This is kind of a cop out with the way they ended this movie. It gave us an all too convenient solution. But the journey to that point is very engaging, and the performances of the two lead actresses, make the journey all that much more stronger and enjoyable. For those of you who are looking for your next cinematic challenge after Annihilation, Thoroughbreds is right up your alley. So definitely check this out, Adolfo. If you have the time to go into your art house, if it's still there, definitely check this out. I think it's gonna be worth your time.
Yeah, I think I might have to wait for On Demand because I don't think it's playing anywhere near me anymore. But yeah, it's certainly a movie that piqued my interest because I remember when I saw the trailer, I was like, well, this looks very interesting. And Anya Taylor-Joy has had my attention since The Witch last year or 2 years ago. 2 years ago. Right. She's also she was in Split, which was she was really good in that film. She was in something else high profile, and I can't remember what it was now. But she's been catching my attention a lot recently, and she's really an incredibly gifted actress.
Oh, absolutely. And then Olivia Cooke is amazing here too, but we're going to talk about her a little more with Ready Player One because she was great in that too, but we'll save that for a little bit later on. But definitely for those of you who still have this movie playing by you, check it out. I know it's been exiting a lot of theaters lately because I think this came out about a month ago now. So if you can still see it in theaters, definitely check it out. If not, definitely check it out. Netflix or Blu-ray is well worth your time. So moving on from Thoroughbreds, I actually did intend on trying to see Pacific Rim. The day I went to, I had planned on seeing it. I wasn't feeling well after work, so I just went home. So I missed out on it. But I know, Adolfo, you saw it. So why don't you tell us about Pacific Rim Uprising?
Pacific Rim Uprising. So the first Pacific Rim, for those who may or may not remember, was about basically there is a interdimensional rift in space where these big, huge kaiju, which are basically giant monsters like you would get from a Godzilla movie, come out and attack the world. So the world decided that they needed to make giant robot monsters to fight them. And that was basically the first movie. It's directed by Guillermo del Toro. It was kind of his baby, and that was a really fun. Just giant monster movie, giant robot movie, sci-fi ridiculousness. It didn't take itself too seriously. It was just a lot of fun. And that's kind of where it was. And for years, people have been clamoring for a sequel. And Guillermo wanted to make a sequel, but the studios didn't really want to. Finance it because the first one, while it made money, didn't. It's kind of like that whole it made money, but didn't make quite as much money as we wanted it to. So the sequel got delayed, and then he went on to other projects, probably Shape of Water, although he still has a producing credit on this one. So this film takes place, I'd say, roughly 10 to 15 years after the first film. The Idris Elba character, who, spoilers, died in the first film. He's not in this film, but his son, played by John Boyega of Star Wars, he's his son. He's kind of taking up the mantle. He is a former pilot of the. What do they call the freaking robots now? I can't even remember there.
Oh, me either, because I haven't seen that first Pacific Rim in a while.
I gotta look it up now because I feel stupid that I don't remember their names. They are the Jaegers. The Jaegers.
Jaegers.
So he's a Jaeger pilot, but he kind of washed out, and he's kind of just. But he's one of the best, but he washed out, and he's not really in the program anymore. He kind of runs across this little girl, teenage girl who's stealing scraps and building her own Jaegers, which don't get me started on how she's actually pulling that off. But she's clearly she's a little juvenile delinquent that is they establish as being very smart and resourceful and can pilot Jaegers. So they kind of run into each other, and then they kind of get in trouble with the law. So they end up getting recruited back into the Jaeger program by Scott Eastwood, who, by the way, that dude just looks exactly like his dad. There are just times where he it's uncanny how much Scott Eastwood looks like his dad. You could put him in a poncho and a cowboy hat, and he looks like he walked off of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Now he's not as good of an actor. Don't get me wrong, he's definitely not. But there are just times where he just gives a squint. I'm like, oh my god. It's freaking Clint Eastwood. It's uncanny. Anyway, yeah. So Scott Eastwood is the kind of the program leader now, and he's the kind of the main Jaeger pilot, right? And he's trying to, and he recruits John Boyega and this girl back into the to start piloting Jaegers. And then you kind of meet kind of a whole cast of different Jaeger pilots that are kind of young recruits that are waiting to wage war against the kaiju, because after the last film, they had actually been kind of extinct, not extinct, but they hadn't been much of a threat because in the last film they did stop the threat, but they're still kind of on guard, waiting for anyone to come, to be brought back. And I'm really explaining a lot in this film because the one of the issues of the film is that it's way more complex than it needs to be. All the while, you've got a side plot going on where Charlie Day's character is working for a corporation that's making drones, drone Jaegers, so that you don't have to pilot them in the suit anymore. You can do it, remotely, and it's going to replace the whole Jaeger program. And then at the same time, a rogue Jaeger kind of goes loose, and the real pilots have to kind of fight him. And then after all that, then the kaiju come back, and they have to fight the kaiju and this rogue Jaeger that you don't know who's behind it. And then then there's a huge, massive, enormous battle with where all the kaiju basically there's 4 or 5 kaiju, and then they all and you've seen it in the trailer, so it's not really a spoiler, but they all kind of transform into one enormous, physics-defying monster that they all have to fight at the end. And then you have a huge monster battle at the end. And that's the basic plot of the film. As far as my review goes, I would have left well enough alone and just kept the first one. It's not a bad... Again, it's kind of like Tomb Raider, right? It's not bad. It's if you're sitting there and you turn your brain off, you can kind of enjoy the spectacle of it, right? But, and by the way, I was totally wrong. I said this wouldn't unseat Black Panther, and it did. So I was wrong from that. But you can turn your brain off and watch the spectacle on the screen, and it's fine in that. But the story is terrible. There's so much unneeded complexity and twists and turns. There is a character from the first film. I'm not going to say who it is. There's a character from the first film who returns. that does basically a heel turn in the middle of the movie, and they kind of try and say, oh, it's because this character has been mind controlled by the kaiju, and now he's evil. But he kind of remains evil at the end of the film, so it's not like a convenient, like, oh, he turned heel, but then like they baby faced him at the end. No, he's still heel. And it's like one of those things, like, really, did we need this? Was this necessary for the plot? Like, because you can't really take this character very seriously as a heel, so you're like, okay, whatever. The giant monster fight at the end, and this is kind of a problem that the first one had, where it's like, okay, it's fun to watch giant monsters beat each other up, but at a certain point, like, you have to kind of take into consideration that, like, so like in the first movie, all right, so when you watch old Godzilla movies, right, and you see like Godzilla fighting Mecha Godzilla or Mothra or Gamera or whatever, right, it's the effects are so cheesy, right, that you don't think about, even though they're in all, like, knocking down buildings and shit, you don't really think about like the collateral damage that they're actually doing, right? But because these movies are like realistic in how they're filmed, like, so like they put a lot of attention to detail in the special effects and the buildings and the streets and everything else, like, you were watching it and you're like, this is like 1 million 9/11s right now. Like, it's so ridiculous. Like, this is like, but you're like, but it's being played up for fun and laughs. But it's like, this is a horrible tragedy. This city is destroyed. There's no coming back from this city. This city is gone now. Like, and yeah, they do the whole like, oh, we've evacuated the city. It's like, okay, whatever. But like, it's still like, this city is no more now. Like, and it's not really addressed in any serious manner. And I know, again, it's supposed to be a giant monster movie, but when you kind of think about like how realistic they make the city look, and the robots and the giant monsters in relation to it, you kind of get like, and you see like monsters literally crashing into entire sections of buildings and then knocking down like 7 city blocks. You're like, this is horrendous. like it's, there should be there should be gravity to this situation, but there's not. And I think that's kind of a problem with it, you know? So yeah. It kind of, the reason those old monster movies work is because they're so obviously phony that you can remove yourself and kind of laugh at them. But here they take such efforts to make it look real that it's like, okay, this is literally 1 million 9/11s right now. Like, this is like the worst thing in humanity that could ever happen, right? I don't know. It's kind of fun to watch the monsters beat each other up, but it's so poorly written that there are points where you just kind of tune out. And like, the character arcs are very predictable. Like, you know, oh, John Boyega, he's got a chip on his shoulder, but he's gonna come back and do the right thing, you know. And oh, of course he's gonna team up with the little girl at the end of the movie, you know. And right. Of course, like, the tension between him and Scott Eastwood is gonna have like a Maverick Iceman relationship, you know. Like, it's like, there's nothing surprising about it, and except for that one heel turn where you're like, really, they're doing this? It's. You know, you haven't seen it, you know, and we texted last night. He's like, oh, I haven't had a chance to see it yet. And I kind of said, you can wait. You can wait for this one. You can wait for like Netflix or DVD or Blu-ray or whatever. Like, you don't need to see this, rush out and see this. Like, even though you could say, well, the spectacle on the big screen would be cool. Yeah, that's one argument for it. But even if you have a big enough TV and a Blu-ray player, you don't really even need to see that. Like, you'll be fine if you have a nice big screen TV and a nice sound system. It'll look just fine on your TV. Like, it's not worth the money to go out and watch. It's not a good worthy competitor to unseat Black Panther from the #1 spot, in my opinion. It just was not entertaining. Like, I just was bored, and I never thought I'd be bored seeing giant monsters fight, but I was kind of bored.
Yeah, that's kind of disappointing. Although, I mean, like we said, I think when we first talked about this, that Guillermo was back as a producer, not behind the camera. So, I mean, it probably wasn't going to have the same kind of flair that the original one did. I mean, I'm sure it was a spectacle in and of itself, but probably not something worth shelling out $12 for, you know.
Yeah, again, it's not the worst thing I've seen. It's certain. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's not like I'm trying to think of like a bad movie from like we've seen recently that we've talked about that we hated, but I didn't hate it. It's just, and you might go into your. It certainly is a movie that you can turn your brain off and have fun with it. I just couldn't turn my brain off and have fun with it, I guess is really the thing.
Right. All right, so that'll do it for Pacific Rim Uprising. We've got one more film to talk about on this episode, our main event film, as you will. Ready Player One, and holy shit, I was not ready for how good this movie made me feel, bro. This film was a geek's paradise. It really was. I'm gonna let you get things started for us for Ready Player One, but I came out of that with a huge smile on my face. Like this was a fucking ride, man, and I had a great time from start to finish. But tell us about Ready Player One.
It's fucking Chucky. So that was my favorite part of that movie. I popped so hard for that moment. So Ready Player, and I didn't spoil anything but you'll know it when you see it, folks. So Ready Player One was based on a book by Ernest Cline, which is and the book and the movie share a lot of similarities, but they share a lot of differences. So I read the book like a year ago, and I was a big fan of the book. And then like almost kind of by fate, because I had it one of those books that had like been sitting in my like to read list for a while, because I had heard about, it's this book about 80s nostalgia and lots of pop culture references and things like that. And I'm an 80s kid. I love the 80s. Like it's I was born in 1980, and like I have a very fond attachment to that decade, as a lot of people do to the decade that they grew up in. So like that like just by the description of the book, like it certainly hit like a sweet spot for me. Like it was like, yeah, I'll read that. I'll get around to it. So if it was one of those books that when I read it, I couldn't actually put it down. And I read it with I read the book, like actual reading it, not listening to it. I read it within I got through half of it in about a day. And because to be fair, it's like a Harry Potter book. It's not very difficult to read. It's very, very easy language. It's meant for teenagers, right? It's not complex literature here, right? This is as fluffy entertainment as the movie is. The book is certainly just as fluffy entertainment. But I was so into it just because it just hit that nostalgia button really hard for me, that I actually bought it again on audiobook just so I could I just started from the beginning again, just because it was easier to me to find the time to listen to it as opposed to sit down and read it. So I would just listen to it on my way to work and stuff. And I read it basically almost once, and then I listened to it once. And then as soon as I finished reading it, and you remember last summer is whenever during the Comic-Con is whenever they released the trailer for it,
right.
And it was within a week that had finished the book that they released the trailer, and so I was it came just in time for me. That trailer came just in time for me, and I geeked the fuck out of that trailer. So the film and the book is about Wade Watts, who is a teenage kid who lives in the Stacks, which is in the future. And the Stacks is basically a bunch of mobile homes stacked on top of each other. And it's kind of a dystopian future where people have basically are just constantly connected to virtual environments all the time, and they don't really live in the real world anymore. Most of it's controlled by IOI, kind of this shadowy corporation. It's certainly a commentary on corporations controlling everything and people kind of losing the will to actually interact in life, right? It's a very thinly veiled commentary. And this kid, Wade Watts, he's kind of a nerdy kid. He only kind of really lives when he's in what's called the Oasis, which is basically kind of like the Matrix, where, it is a virtual environment, except that everyone who's in it knows that they're in it as opposed to the Matrix. And then the film and the book pretty much immediately set up that the creator of this world has died, and when he died, he basically left an Easter egg within the game. And when I say to back up a little bit, when I say it's the Matrix, it's more than just one world. It's anything you can ever possibly imagine going to as like an avatar, you can go to that specific world. If you wanted to go to a, like they show like a Minecraft planet right at the beginning. If you want to go to like a racing planet, you can go to that. You can go to a Batman planet, whatever. Like there's all different like worlds that you can visit while you're within this. And within that entire universe, he's hidden an Easter egg and 3 different tasks to get to that Easter egg. And if whoever finds it, and the character's name is James Halliday, played by our boy Mark Rylance.
Yeah, that's right.
Whoever finds it can basically inherits the company and wins $500 billion and get control of the entire Oasis. So the film starts off with Wade coming into the Oasis. He's got friends in there. He's got a crush on this online girl, and the first task is a race, which is, right away they hit you with the pop culture right there, because you can spot so many different pop culture automobiles in there, like you see the Mach 5, you see the A-Team van, you see the Batman 66 Batmobile,
yep.
Among others. You see the Mad Max Imperator, you see you see Bigfoot, and then there's all sorts of things in obviously the DeLorean. You see all sorts of like different attacks and like monsters. You see the T-Rex from Jurassic Park. You see King Kong, and the whole point is to get past the race and find the key, which leads to the next task. Then there's a second task, which is basically you have to survive the movie The Shining, and then the third task is basically this giant assault, and then they have to play a video game to find an Easter egg. So that's the basic kind of plot of the film. But during all this, the corporation itself, IOI, is trying to get control of, is trying to find the Easter egg too, because if they find it, then they control everything, as opposed to kind of mostly controlling it now. They don't want like some random person to control everything. So they're trying to, by finding the Easter egg, they can ensure that they own it. And their whole plan is basically to put pop-up ads everywhere and monetize it further than it already is, right? So like you could kind of say that they're kind of like EA right now, right? Like, so that's the basic plot of the film. Again, the film is a huge pop culture nostalgia like rush, right? It's like you're mainlining nostalgia for this film. If you grew up in the 80s and 90s, and even in the 2000s, there's some stuff in there for you too. Like you will love that. You will enjoy all the references in this film. It is basically, and I don't. This sounds like I'm diminishing the movie, but it's basically it's not. It's basically fan service. The movie. The only thing that you don't get a lot of is a lot of Steven Spielberg references, because he specifically took those out, because in the book they're all over the place. You see a lot of references to like Indiana Jones or the Goonies and things like that in the book, but he took a lot of them out. Although you still keep the DeLorean, because the DeLorean is a huge part of the book, so you really you couldn't get away with not doing it. You in the final battle, if you look real close, you can see a gremlin running around. But a lot of other stuff is taken out. There's a lot of stuff that they can't address, basically for copyright. There's a lot of IP in this movie, but and the movie was released by Warner Brothers, and a lot of the stuff on screen Warner Brothers doesn't own. Like, for example, Back to the Future, the DeLorean that's a Universal thing, but a lot of the stuff is licensed IP that they use for the film. The only thing you're not going to see in there is any Disney stuff. So no Marvel, no Star Wars, no Disney. You're not seeing any of that stuff. But pretty much anything else that you can imagine to throw on a screen in a movie like this, they threw on there. From references to Street Fighter to Chucky and Child's Play, like I mentioned, fucking Mobile Gundam, Mecha Godzilla, King Kong, like anything you can think of that is like a pop culture point, they threw in this movie, whether it's for like a 1 second frame of a cameo or like an actual plot point, like DeLorean. Like, a lot of stuff in there is Buckaroo Banzai's in there, like a lot of stuff in there. So now I love this movie. It does take some differences from the book. That we can discuss that in a bit, but before I get your take on it, there are a lot of differences from the book. So if you read the book and you haven't seen the movie yet, warning, It like I already kind of mentioned what the challenges were. You'll notice that those challenges are not in the book. The only challenge that is the same as the book is the giant battle at the end and the playing the adventure game on the Atari. That is the only thing that's the same as the book. And like the first two challenges are totally different in the book. So it does stray. And then there's a whole subplot of rebellion where eventually Wade in the real world kind of joins a revolution with Artemis, this other character. That happens in the book, but not in the same way as they do it in the movie. In the movie, they do it way sooner than they do it in the book. The book is more of like an end thing, and in the movie, it's a much more towards the middle. So before we get onto all this other stuff, I do want to say, as much as I enjoyed this movie, there are a couple things I had an issue with, and it's kind of the same issues that I had with the book. The main one, the kind of glaring one is in both the book and the movie, is that Wade is kind of an uninteresting character. Like, he's this kind of random white guy kid, and it's not a white guy thing, but it's just like he's just a random kid. There's nothing really special about him. But he's our lead, right? Like, there's nothing really that makes you invest in him as a character. The much more interesting character is Artemis, the girl that's kind of like leading the revolution in both the book and the movie. She's much more interesting than Wade is, and that's just, I mean, you're following the plot of the book, so you kind of you're kind of forced into like following the same character. But that is the kind of the one thing I will give it, like, where it's like a kind of a criticism where it's like your main character is kind of boring. There's not a lot to him that makes you interested in him. That said, he did an okay job. Ty Sheridan, he did a fine job. But Olivia Cooke, who plays Artemis in this film, was way more interesting and way more engaging in the film. You have our boy Ben Mendelsohn as the heel, who plays a heel in every movie, I guess now. Like, that's just his thing. He's entertaining. He's certainly, he comes off as an absolutely like an 80s villain, where like he's kind of ridiculous in like his like. He's enough of a menace that you take him seriously, but he's also kind of a goof. Like, you're like, this guy's kind of an idiot, you know? Like, his password's really silly. I'm not gonna ruin it, but like his password's pretty silly, and like he's just, and like his avatar that he chooses is really kind of like, is really kind of silly. But it is kind of this. He does kind of channel some 80s villains like that. But he's really entertaining in the film as well. But yeah, this is a nostalgia rush that if you enjoyed the book, you'll probably enjoy the film. Although I know some people with the book are going to like hate all the changes they made. But honestly, I think they made the changes they made for a more exciting movie, than it would have in the book. But yeah, what are your thoughts?
Okay. So right off the bat, like I kind of mentioned already in the intro to this film, I had an absolutely amazing time trying to spot all of the, no pun intended, Easter eggs, all the little cultural references, I should say, the Batmobile, the Mad Max car, the motorcycle from Akira.
Yeah, the Akira mode. I forgot about that one.
All this. Just all this stuff that was part of like either my recent like movie geekiness that I've discovered, or like my childhood, and just since you already talked about it, when they went to The Shining, I was losing my shit.
The Shining level was hilarious. I was laughing so hard during that movie, portion.
Now that was not in the book, right?
That's completely made up for the movie.
Oh man, because that entire sequence where they're literally in The Shining, I was losing my fucking mind, man, because they recreated it so well. And because I had just seen it recently at that Alamo Drafthouse screening, and I had the film pretty much fresh in my head from back in November, and seeing all the stuff play out like it did in the movie, seeing the elevator full of blood. I was probably the only one like marking out the way I was, and I thought I was probably disturbing people with how loud I was laughing and clapping and shit. Like I was literally losing my mind watching that part.
Well, because it's hilarious because like the character H in the film never watched the film, so like he just does all the wrong things while they're on the Shining level. He follows the little twins. He opens the elevator. He goes to room 237. Like everything you could possibly do wrong if you never watched The Shining, that character does wrong. And it's such a like it's just so funny because as soon as you're in there, you're like, all right, someone's going to room 237 and something and they're gonna get and by the way, you don't see Jack Nicholson in the movie, but you do see like hints of the Jack Torrance character. Like so they do he's there but not really there. So like don't think you're gonna see Jack like a digital Jack Nicholson, but you kind of you get the impression that he's there. And like because when they're stuck in the maze, that's pretty fun. Like it's really like that level was like just had me cracking up. It was so much fun.
Absolutely. There was also the when H went into 237 and the lady came out of the tub. I was like, oh, are they gonna show tits like in the movie? And I was severely disappointed at that. But I mean that whole sequence was just recreated so well, especially the big they walked by the picture.
Yes.
The ball, the 4th of July ball picture from the end. I saw that and I was marking it out too. And I think who was there instead of Jack Nicholson?
It was Halliday. It was James Halliday.
Halliday, right? Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, but yeah, that was a great sequence. The you mentioned our other boy Ben Mendelsohn. He was awesome in this movie too. I don't have much to disagree with as far as Wade goes. You're pretty much correct in kind of how he's just kind of blah as a character. Like everybody around him is much more interesting than Wade is.
Yeah, and that's a problem with the book too.
Yeah, especially Artemis, who, like I said, played by Olivia Cook, who we talked about earlier in Thoroughbreds. She and the thing I made a point to notice was that she looked way better in this movie, just on a physical level, than in Thoroughbreds, which was by design, because in Thoroughbreds, like, she doesn't wear any makeup. Like, she looks like she's nuts. While here, she's able to get dolled up a little more, and you really see how pretty she is. So I was definitely like I like to say on this show, my catchphrase is my flagpole was at full salute for that one. But yeah, she was like, her character was great too. She, like you said, leading the resistance against IOI. H was really good in this movie. I think played by Lena Waithe, I believe was her. You say her last name. She was from I think Master of None.
Yeah, she's in Master of None.
Right.
You just blew the H thing, by the way.
Well, okay. Spoilers, folks. Sorry, everybody, but spoilers. But everybody except, I don't want to say like Wade was bad. What's the guy's name? Ty Sheridan.
Yeah, he was fine. Yeah. Just the character's just a little boring.
The character's not like very well written. He's just kind of like, it's almost like I kind of feel like that was by design, and I say that because he's supposed to be us exploring this world, but at the same time, like you could make him a little more interesting, a little more kind of what's the right word? I guess more involved, a little more engaging character. He's just like the guy that's just exploring the oasis, like doesn't know what's going on. He wants to find the egg, and so he's essentially like he's the stand-in for us, the audience, So, which is nothing wrong with that. I just wish that the character had been a little more engaging and a little more interesting. But everything else that you said, I pretty much agree with. Like the references, like it's gonna take multiple viewings to catch all of the references. Did you see the Mayor Goldie Wilson flyers?
I did. I saw that. I did see that. Did you catch the? So this is probably the point where we're going to talk about all the references that we enjoyed. So tune out now if you don't want to listen. But there's so much stuff in here that I love. I love the Mayor Goldie Wilson one. Did you catch the Last Action Hero one?
No, I missed that one.
Okay, so Zach Penn adapted Ready Player One for the screen, but Zach Penn also wrote was the original spec script writer of Last Action Hero, and during the race, during their initial race at the beginning, they pass a theater marquee. And if you remember what Arnold Schwarzenegger's name in that movie is, it's Jack Slater, and they pass a movie theater marquee where it says Jack Slater and then like some movie name. I forget what the movie name is, but I think it's the movie name that from one of the movies in in Last Action Hero. So that popped me when I saw that. I pop for all the Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat references.
Oh yeah, me too.
Whenever Goro pops up out of nowhere, that cracked me up. I pop for the Superman quote that they used in that movie. I pop for like the thing is, you have to watch this movie a couple of times. It's gonna be better when it comes out on Blu-ray because you're gonna be able to pause, or digital, really, the HD digital, because there's so many ones that like are just randomly in the background, and if you miss it, you miss it. Like Marvin, did you catch Marvin the Martian?
I did. I saw Marvin the Martian.
Hello Kitty.
No, I didn't see
Hello Kitty's running around back there. Freddy Krueger is like a blink and you miss.
Oh, I didn't see Freddy Krueger. Oh shit.
Freddy Krueger's in there for a hot second. So is Duke Nukem. Jason Voorhees, you see, like you don't. It's hard to miss him because they show him a couple times.
Yeah.
Who else is in there that I really pop for? The Iron Giant was one of my favorite. I mean, he's certainly a featured part of the.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And did you notice the Terminator 2 reference they did at the end of the Iron Giant?
Oh wait, what he did the thumbs up, right?
The thumbs
okay.
Up.
Yeah, that was I caught that too.
What else? I'm trying to think what else. I don't know. There's so much stuff in there.
So apparently, the book had Blade Runner, but they couldn't do that for this movie, right? Is that true?
Blade Runner is referenced in that book. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't see any Blade Runner references in the movie.
Yeah, but that was I think they had to take that out because I think I read that because 2049 was in production while they were filming this, like they couldn't get the rights to it, so they replaced it with The Shining.
Oh, well, but Blade Runner wasn't a level in the book. So the levels in the book were, and that's the thing, the movie made it way more exciting. The first level in the book was, I mean, this could have been fine in a movie, but basically the first level in the book was playing the game Joust, the old video game Joust, right. Which they could have done like in like a really cool CG way to do that, right? The second level in the book was, I think it was going through. Oh, it was really weird. It was the movie War Games.
Matthew Broderick.
But the character became Matthew Broderick in the movie and had to reenact the entire movie in the to like gain points and stuff. And then there's another level where he had to like go through some old role playing game as well. So like a lot of these things just from a visual perspective, I don't think would have been very interesting, which is why they changed a lot of it. So that's why I think the Shining level really worked, and conveniently, Warner Brothers owns The Shining, so there you go. But also, the race I think was a much better use of that time too, because you saw all those vehicles. The only one I think I would have liked to have seen that I didn't see, I would have liked to see the Ecto one in there. You didn't see that one, but you did see like all those other major ones, like obviously the DeLorean, the Mad Max car, the Kira cycle, Bigfoot. I popped for Bigfoot. What else is in there? Mach 1 from Speed Racer, the Batmobile. And I like that they used the 66 Batmobile, but I also would have popped that they used the 89 Batmobile. They should have if they do a sequel, they should put the 89 Batmobile in there. What else is in there?
All right, let's see. So I'm pulling up a list.
The 18 van?
I'm pulling up a list of all the references. Let's see. So yeah, Freddy Krueger, Harley Quinn in the nightclub.
Yep, I saw her.
The Joker. This is Wade's virtual avatar is briefly modded to look like the Batman. Oh, that's right. Yeah, remember he looked like the Joker a little bit in one of his avatars.
Yes.
Let me see.
And you also see the Joker in the nightclub too.
Batman we saw at the beginning, I think, right?
And you also see him in the fight at the end. So you see Batman and Batgirl at the end. But so the Batman at the beginning is just like regular Batman, but in the final fight you see like Arkham Knight Batman. And you also see Batgirl in there too. You see Spawn. Spawn popped up for a second.
Oh, I didn't see Spawn.
Spawn is in there, yeah.
Let's see. So you talked about Jurassic Last Action Heroes here, like you just mentioned. Battlestar Galactica, Alien. Oh, the Chestburster. That's right.
The Chestburster. They did use the Chestburster.
Yes. GoldenEye, which was Halliday's favorite game.
They talked about GoldenEye.
Slapper's own. That's what they were. They had that. It was just mentioned in a conversation with Artemis and Wade, but
enough for nothing. They said his favorite character was Oddjob. Come on, man, that's cheating. You're not allowed to use Oddjob.
I popped at that too
bullshit.
Because that's the one everybody would fight for when we used to play, man.
No, Oddjob's off the table. Like you're not allowed to use Oddjob.
Oh my God! Let's see. The Superman, like the Avatar of the Clark Kent glasses. Remember?
Yep, Clark Kent glasses. Forgot about
Which
that.
which was a cool reference because like we talked about that on the Superman show. Like he puts on the glasses and all of a sudden nobody can recognize him. So
Yeah. He had and when he was trying on outfits, he tried the Thriller outfit on. He tried Purple Rain on, and then finally he settled on Buckaroo Banzai.
yeah, that's the Buckaroo Banzai reference. Some old Atari games like Galaga, Asteroid, Space Invaders. Let me see. With Star Wars, like we said, the Disney stuff was pretty much off limits. But I think our boy Mendelsohn, who ironically enough was in Rogue One, did mention the Millennium Falcon.
They did mention the Millennium Falcon. You're right. Yeah, they did, but they don't show it because of obvious reasons.
Right.
What else? There's a He-Man lunchbox I saw at one point. I think he has a Battletoads. You see the Battletoads?
No, I didn't.
The Battletoads are in there, and the Ninja Turtles are in there.
Oh my!
But
I think the Turtles
Bay
I did
Turtles.
see. I think
the Michael Bay Ninja Turtles, unfortunately, but still, they're in there.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, I remember now. You're absolutely right. It says the Knight Rider car Kit was in the race.
I didn't see him, but the Knight Rider lights were on the DeLorean, like that little blinking red light that was on the DeLorean. But I didn't actually see Kit itself. I'm sure it might be in there. I just didn't see it.
Yeah, let me see. A lot of the stuff here that's it's also references, like just stuff that was talked about, like Breakfast Club was mentioned, Saturday Night Fever was mentioned, Animal House was mentioned.
Oh, the Holy Hand Grenade from Monty Python. They have that
yes,
in there.
There you go.
Oh, they use a Madball. Do you remember? Were you around for Madballs? Or was that before your time?
I think that was before.
Oh, Madball! I had Madball. So when they used a Madball at the end, I popped. They used the. Have you ever seen Crawl?
No.
Crawl is a horrible 80s fantasy movie. So I'm not sure if you remember that at one point, I think Artemis throws, it's either Artemis or one of the two Japanese guys throws like this kind of like spinning, like, kind of like a throwing star, but it has like these claws on it. That's the weapon from Crawl. And it's a really shitty 80s sci-fi fantasy movie from like 1982 or something. It's really bad, but it's kind of funny that they put it in there.
Nice. Halo's in, like Master Chief and some of the soldiers from Halo are in the big final fight, I think. It's just Mass Effect. It's the Shepard avatar scene in the nightclub. Okay, well, I haven't played Mass Effect in years, so
Sonic is in there. Sonic the Hedgehog.
Sonic the Hedgehog, yes, that's right.
And so did Lara Croft.
Yes.
And a much better appearance than the movie that we talked about earlier.
RoboCop was there.
I missed RoboCop. I did miss RoboCop. I didn't see him.
Yeah, and here's Duke Nukem, like you said before. Let me see. Spaceballs, the Eagle 5 replicas in H's garage.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. That's awesome.
I missed that too, so don't feel bad. Let me see. And that's pretty much of all the stuff that I know. Like, there's other stuff like Borderlands, like some recent stuff like Chappie.
I didn't see Chappie. Though the magic spell from Excalibur they used whenever they put that big like force field around. I noticed that one.
Speaking of that part, TJ Miller, what do you think of him?
He was kind of funny. Like it was again, he kind of falls to that 80s villain category where he's kind of goofy, but he's still a kind of a major threat. You never actually see him without his avatar. You only see him in avatar form. In the book, he's much more. That character's in the book, but he's much more of a goof. Like in the book, he's like a poser. Like he's he's not really like good at any of this. And he's just kind of this guy that like he doesn't pose a threat, but he fucks something up for Wade in the book. But in the movie, they made him much more an actual villain, which I thought was interesting. Right. But he was fine.
Yeah, he was fine here. Like he was the comic relief for all of his scenes. And they were, honestly, like he was all right. They were done really well. But again, like to kind of bring this whole thing full circle, like I said at the beginning, I walked out of that theater with the biggest smile on my face. I had a rough day at work that day, actually. And to come out of this movie just in the biggest spirits. Like, for now, I think this is my favorite movie of the year so far. A Quiet Place is giving it a run for its money. I haven't really decided which one, but they're my 1-2 punch right now for this year so far. But this movie, like for somebody like me who just loves pop culture, 80s and 90s stuff, there was a lot of more recent cultural references here as well, but especially for some of that older pop culture stuff, it was an amazing ride to sit through. So kudos to Senor Spielbergo and everybody for Ready Player One. That was some ride, and I'm definitely looking forward to revisiting it again when I purchase it.
Yeah, it's so much fun. Like, and I know. Here's the thing. It is fluff. It's absolutely fluff entertainment. There's nothing quote unquote serious about this film. It's not necessarily even particularly groundbreaking in how it's made. Like the effects are really good, and because they kind of bordered on that, like you're in a virtual environment, so kind of like the CG of it doesn't bother you because you already know it's a virtual environment. But like when you're in that world, everything looks really nice and crisp. And it's not necessarily Spielberg's even best film, but it is just a fun ride. Like it's, especially if you're into this, like it's. I mean, again, it is fan service. It's absolutely fan service, but it's fun fan service, and I really enjoyed it. My favorite moment, I mean, has to be the very end of the movie. Whenever they play "We're Not Gonna Take It," as they go on assault the castle, right? And as they do that, the character holds up the boombox, "Say Anything" style.
Yes,
I mean that just, again, it just takes my nostalgia button and just really pushes it hard. So I really, really enjoyed this film. It's going to be a day one purchase whenever it's available, and just so I can just sit and just pause it the entire time, trying to look for different references, because I'm sure there's ones we missed.
Yeah, but if I didn't let on before, my favorite sequence is obviously the whole sequence at The Shining. I was just absolutely losing my mind for that entire 10 or so minute duration that they were there. It was just so it was one of those things where I couldn't imagine these two universes crossing, and they did, and like my mind was not ready for it. So I was just sitting there like laughing and just beside myself the whole time. But it was just amazing to be able to just sit through that particular sequence. Granted, the whole movie, like you said, is fluff. It's all about, nostalgia. It's all about fan service. Nothing particularly quote unquote serious about it. But just from that sequence alone, I gave the movie like 4 stars just because of how the great time I had just sitting through that. But yeah, like you said, it is it's quite a ride, especially if you're into pop culture. If you're gonna understand all these references, it's definitely something to check out. Definitely while it's still in theaters as well, because you have that movie magic, that you only see sometimes when you watch it on the big screen. So while it's still in theaters, definitely check it out. Like you said, it is a day one purchase for me as well, and I just can't wait to watch this multiple times in the future now.
Fucking Chucky, man.
Fucking Chucky.
That's my favorite. Honestly, that was my favorite part.
But with that, I guess we're gonna wrap up Forced Perspective. Any questions, comments, feedbacks, and an email to fpmpodcast@gmail.com. You can follow the show on Twitter at FP Movie Podcast. You can also look like us, like our Facebook page, facebook.com/FPM Podcast, I believe, or just search for Forced Perspective Movie Podcast in the search box. You can follow me on Twitter at SportsGuy515. By the time you listen to this, it'll be probably after Mania, so I was going to plug all my Mania tweets today, but I'm sure they'll be there for posterity when you do hear this. Dolfo, plugs.
EssentialFilmsPodcast.com. That's the website, the Essential Films Podcast. That is the podcast. You can get that on iTunes. I also am uploading newer ones on YouTube and older ones. I'm going through the archive and posting older ones on YouTube. Our next episode is Superman, which we have recorded. I am just taking my sweet time to actually edit and put on the air. Because, and one thing that I have come across, and you might, depending on where you're listening to this, whether you're listening to it in your on a podcast version or on YouTube, the YouTube version going forward is going to be different than the podcast version, because YouTube is a pain in the ass to deal with. As far as, unlike Ready Player One, you can't have any references on YouTube because they'll strike your ass with a copyright claim, even if it's bogus. So the audio only versions feature a lot more music cues and audio cues, whereas the YouTube versions are basically just going to be us talking. And so, but you can find us on both. Twitter is at Essential Films and at Adolfo _Acosta, and like us on Facebook, The Essential Films.
Absolutely. Next week, we're going to be talking about hopefully Isle of Dogs. I hope you get to see it before next week so we can talk about it. Because I've been dying to talk about that one for a while now.
Okay, I'm going to see it anyway. But should I be prepared given my sensitivity about dogs?
Not
Don't
really.
spoil anything, but should I prepare myself to cry? Because if I know going in, it won't be as bad.
Well, if you're referencing, let's just say a passing, then no.
Okay.
But if you're just looking, if
That's
it's
all I need to know.
the story, then yes.
Okay.
The story is very emotional.
Okay.
So, but yeah, so hopefully we'll do Isle of Dogs next week. Finally, definitely A Quiet Place next week. I'm dying to talk about that one right now.
I heard it's good.
I did see Blockers, which I was surprisingly impressed with because it started out slow for me, but it redeemed itself halfway through the end.
How's our boy?
Well, let's just say if you like John Cena and his ass in a train wreck, you'll see a lot more of that in this movie. So that's all I'm gonna say.
All right.
For all of our Simons of the world, if you like John Cena in that form, you'll see quite a bit of that here.
So you can see him.
Yes, this time after you see him, you wish you hadn't seen him. No, but acting wise, he is really good here. You know, he's coming into.
I have heard that he's very. I mean, he was good in Trainwreck, and I've heard I've almost every single review I've read about Blockers has praised him. So, hey, maybe he's gonna. Maybe he's gonna turn into The Rock and like leave wrestling, which I'd be okay.
Which he said he'd never do. If you remember that, he said he'd never do that
until Hollywood's like, here's $10 million to not take bumps. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So hopefully Blockers next week, A Quiet Place, Isle of Dogs, and I think that's it. I'm gonna wait. Okay, and I'll announce this now. I'm gonna wait till maybe June or July to do Hurricane Heist by the time it hits Netflix. So I want you to see. I really want you to see this so we could like talk about it. Same thing with Draven. Draven is kind of lagging on that movie because it's like but when you watch it, you come away with so many emotions. Not all of them good, but it's like at the same time, it's one of those like it's gonna top my worst of the year, but in a lighthearted, fun way because it's one of those movies that is like it's so horrible, but you can't help but enjoy it anyway. So I definitely want to talk about that one in the future. Like maybe do a whole show on it, bro. Wow. It might get the 999 treatment. I don't know if I mentioned that already, but I was planning. Yeah. But anyway,
you're still talking about that movie.
I know, right?
I don't know if
it's anybody else.
Either that, I can't tell if that's longer or Rock coming down with the flamethrower.
Oh God, or Magneto standing there doing nothing in Apocalypse.
I just rewatched that movie again, by the way, the Apocalypse, and yeah, you're right. He does fucking just stand there for a long time, not doing anything.
Doing nothing.
I still don't hate that movie as much as everyone else does. I think it's fine. It's not good. Like it's not on the par of the previous two entries in that series, but yeah, he does fucking stand there for a long time, not doing anything.
And I think this week, let me just go to Fandango before we sign off, because I want to see what's going on this week. I think it's Rampage, right? Coming out this week, I think.
Yeah.
Let me see.
I gotta be honest. I'm gonna watch other things before I see Rampage.
Let's see. See all coming soon. Let me see. So what's coming out this week? Never heard of it. Truth or Dare from our boys at Blumhouse. That's coming out. There is Rampage. Those are the two I think from this week then. And then after that, I think we're just looking forward to Avengers at that point. So
yeah, Avengers is coming up, sneaking up on us.
Yeah, I don't see anything else that I would go see after this week until Avengers. Maybe I'm hold on. Let me just take a couple seconds here. Just look through the week of the 20th. I don't know what that is. There's that I Feel Pretty with Amy Schumer. I guess. Super Troopers 2. Never saw the first one, so I don't care.
Real quick on that I Feel Pretty thing, I think it's funny that they originally had the April 27th date, and then Avengers moved back to April 27th, and they're like, fuck! And they had to move it again.
That's true, bro, which was a smart move in my opinion.
Well, yeah, they would have been buried.
Yeah, but anyway, that's pretty much it. So Rampage, maybe Truth or Dare, because Blumhouse. I heard Happy Death Day was good from our boy Draven, so I might check.
I actually just bought that for $3 on Vudu. They were having some sale, and it was like $3.99 on Vudu. I was like, I'll buy it, and it's as much as a rental, right? So I'll buy it and see if I like. I haven't watched it yet, but I've heard it's good.
Yeah. So, do you think we'll have Rampage for next week, or we're gonna save that one?
I think I'd rather talk about the other movies first, like I Love Dogs and A Quiet Place and Blockers, before we talk about Rampage.
Okay.
If I can squeeze in Rampage, I'll let you know. But it's the last on the priority list.
Okay. No issues there, man. But I guess with that, do you have any final words before we get out of here?
No. No. Everything. I think we're good.
All right. So to all the wrestling fans out there, enjoy WrestleMania. I know I will. I'm sure you will, Adolfo. Hopefully.
Let's see. I hope.
We'll see. But on behalf of Adolfo, I'm Sports Guy 515. Thank you so much for joining us. And until next week, we are out of here.